Hi guys, welcome back to the channel for what is probably going to be my favourite deep dive video of this summer series. We're going to be talking the Reds, we're going to be talking Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool, and after a pretty disappointing season I guess last year, I'm certainly hoping that Jurgen can pull one out the bag this season, get all of his players back fit and have a decent Premier League campaign. We're going to talk about obviously players a bit later on, but let's kick on with the fixtures. Let's go straight into what Liverpool's first six look like. Now, the Chelsea game in game week 3 obviously is going to be a tricky game, but Norwich, Burnley, Leeds, Palace, Brentford, Liverpool have got everything that they need to get off to a really good start in the league this season. So I've put my man Mo Salah there because a lot of you guys should be looking at him for potential captaincy over that first 6 game weeks. The fixtures look really, really good. And actually, even if you use the Fantasy Football Scout ticker on the right-hand side of the webpage, if you're a member on Fantasy Football Scout, you can look up the fixtures over the following weeks. You can go past game week 6 all the way to the end of the season. And actually, if you start extending it out to game week 7, 8, 9 and 10, there's a couple of tricky ones in there, but the Liverpool fixtures still don't look too bad even after game week 6. So this is an important 10 minutes or so of Liverpool deep dive because I'm going to be recommending some players that I think you should be looking at. First thing I'm going to say though about the fixtures is that actually over the last couple of seasons Liverpool haven't got off to a great start defensively, and I'll show you what I mean. So if you go back to the 1920 season, I had a look at this. I just had this feeling in my head that actually, okay, I want to invest in Trent. I'll talk to you about Trent Alexander-Arnold later, guys, in FPL 7.5 million. And I'll be making the case potentially for the double up with Robertson also at 7 million in FPL. But I had it in my head, I thought, I'm sure Liverpool conceded a lot of silly one-off goals at the beginning of the 1920 season when we were champions. And I think that's the case, guys. And I'm hoping, and I nicked this from Wikipedia, you guys can see here, that actually outside of Liverpool went to Turf Moor there on the 31st of August, went to Sheffield United on the 28th of September. But outside of that, there were a lot of games where Liverpool conceded 1 goal. And this coincided at the beginning of the 1920 season with Alisson's injury. Alisson got injured in that first game against Norwich when Liverpool won 4-1. And I remember Sam and I, we went down to St Mary's to watch Southampton 1, Liverpool 2. And although Liverpool were 2-0 up in that game, it was a mistake from Adrian at the time that let in Danny Ings and he got the tap in. And then against Arsenal, if I remember rightly, it was another goal that kind of came a bit out of the blue. It was maybe a mistake. So there might have been some mitigating circumstances there with no Alisson and maybe Adrian coming in. But nevertheless, wanted to point out to you that at the beginning of 1920, between August and December, so in that period at the beginning of the season before Christmas, even in the season that Liverpool were champions, there were not a lot of clean sheets to start out with. Obviously, fantastic results. Only 1 draw there, the rest wins. So don't get me wrong. Liverpool started like a house on fire the season they were champions. Really, really good run. But I'm talking specifically about the defence. And when we talk about Trent and Robertson later on, maybe here's one of the reasons why I might not double up on them, or maybe think twice about having Trent in at 7.5, because there was a little bit of a tendency to give away a sloppy goal at the beginning of the 1920 season. And then I thought, well, listen, it might not have been the case in 2021, so I had a look at 2021 as well. What were Liverpool like defensively between the beginning of the season and Christmas? And again, mitigating circumstances, I understand it. We were in the middle of COVID, etc., etc. So it was a very odd season. But again, you can start to see a bit of a pattern there where Liverpool have conceded the odd goal. And of course, on the 4th of October, conceded a lot of goals against Aston Villa. And again, yes, I hear your rhetoric, right? Some mitigating circumstances. We had, I think, a penalty save. Jorginho missed a penalty in game week 2 there against Chelsea. So, okay, were we a bit lucky to get the 2-0 win there? And then I think Virgil at some stage gets injured, I think in the Everton game on the 17th of October. So, of course, we might well see a run of games where Liverpool concede the odd goal. But I'm just making the point, guys, that between the start of the season and Christmas in the last couple of years, Liverpool have got off to a really good start in 1920, a bit of a flaky start in 2021, but in both cases they have had a tendency to leak the odd goal or two. So just something to look out for between the start of the season and Christmas. Can Klopp change that? Is he going to tighten it up at the first half of the season so that the defence really does come to the fore? Let's have a look at that defence then. Let's have a look across the game actually. And if you're a member on the Fantasy Football Scout, website. You can check out this in the members area. And if you're not a member on Fantasy Football Scout, there's some links in the description below. Go get your membership sorted early this season, guys. You'll want it for the pre-season. And some of the stats that the FF Scout boys have got there on their members area are insane. And here's a particular table that I picked out about chances created, creativity amongst defenders. And we all know last season that Aaron Creswell was the most creative in terms of assists, 8 assists out of 58 chances created. Lots of corners taken by Creswell as well. So, of course, we all know his value from last season in FPL. But just have a look at Trent at the top there. Now, he was a bit in and out of the team, wasn't he, last season, Trent? These are last season's statistics when actually he was injured for a bit of it. He didn't play quite so many minutes. And one of the things I should have done was put the minutes played up here. But let me tell you, he had a bit of a stop-start season, Trent Alexander-Arnold. But at 7.5 for this season, this table, I think, shows you why he is still really good value. Despite being in and out of the team, 77 chances created. And we all talked about how creative Shaw is. And don't get me wrong, I think Shaw is a nice pick again for this season. So more on that in the Manchester United video to come. But despite that, Trent still beating for chances created, 77. Now listen, a lot of those come from corners, 106 corners. He comes second only to Robbo, actually. So that shows you how many corners Liverpool had last season. Don't remember us scoring from many of them. So maybe that's something Klopp's looking to change. But also, have a look on the far right there, the goal attempts box. That's the bit that really caught my eye when I was pulling this table. Okay, he's got 5 more chances created than Shaw, and he's kind of on a par with Robertson in terms of his chances created. Goal attempts, 55 goal attempts, guys, 55. And that is way ahead of the next best, which is down the table there, Joao Cancello with 35. And we spoke so often last season about how Cancello drifted into those areas and got those shots away and had a bit of goal threat about him as well. Well, there's Trent. 55 goal attempts. Absolutely ridiculous. And if you chuck on the clean sheets as well, as I mentioned before, the beginning of last season was not that great for Liverpool for clean sheets. Or the season before. If Klopp can get that sorted, if the clean sheets bit can improve, I'd expect the clean sheet count here to go up from 10 for Trent up into the sort of hopefully 15, 16 area from a Liverpool perspective. And then you add in the amount of corners he's taken, the amount of chances he's created, the amount of goal attempts he's taken. I think Trent is absolutely worth having at 7.5, guys, even with that slight caveat I gave you about Liverpool starts to the season. Whether you want to double up with him with Robertson, I think is personal preference. 7 million for Robertson, not bad. Third in the chances created table. Top for corners taken, 119. Again, he took a lot of the corners when Trent was not around last season, when Trent was injured. So if Trent can regain his fitness, come back into the team, does Robertson go off of fewer corners, and therefore that affects the amount of chances he can create, etc., etc. But still 7 assists, 19 goal attempts, not too shabby for a 7 million. But if you're going to ask me right now where I'm going to go with the Liverpool defenders, it's going to be Trent and not the double up. I will be picking Trent on game week 1, almost certainly. Let's have a look at some of the fantasy football fix stats as well. Here's something that I got from the guys over at FF Fix. Really nice stats, and I really like this XFPL stat. Now bear with me, guys, because this is a stat that predicts what FPL points certain premium players, and you'll notice a lot of these players here are premium players that did well last season. Here's their XFPL points. So what's that telling us? That's saying all the underlying stats, all the creativity stats, all the shooting stats, all the final third stats, defensive stats as well, because there's defenders in here. Add them all up, and what should we expected them to have scored in FPL? Let's take Bruno for an example, right? All of those stats added up together, he should have got 233 points. He actually got 244. So, phenomenal season, and he was expected to have a pretty phenomenal season. Slight overperformance by 11 points, but still a great season. Let's have a look at Mo Salah now. Mo Salah, expected to get 230 points, got 231. In what was considerably a kind of poorer season for Liverpool. Were Liverpool always at the races? No. Could Salah have had more? Probably. But listen, still 28 combined goals and assists from 52 shots on target, which is not too shabby from Mo. So 231 points. He more or less achieved what he was expected to achieve in FPL. He's expected to be brilliant, and he was brilliant. And again, this is the thing with Salah. You're going to get that consistency. We've seen it year after year after year, and was in contention for the Golden Boot come the end of the season. So again, he looks like an absolutely top-notch pick, as I suggested at the beginning of the video, for captaincy over the first few weeks. So Mo Salah, I think, is going to be in my team. Then have a look at Trent. Here's going back to the Trent stats that I pulled up a second ago. 10 goals and assists combined. 189 points, so nearly 190 points expected in FPL. 160 points was his actual. So could you say that he underperformed his potential? Was the amount of corners he was taking and the chances that he created and the shots that he was getting away, was he a bit unlucky not to have more FPL points? Probably. That's what these stats are saying, is that actually he could have had 30 more points, roughly 30 more points than he actually got. And then if you look at Robertson, a similar story, not quite to the extent of Trent, but probably, based on all the underlying stats that are collected, 180.5 points is what he should have had, 161. So about a 19-point underachievement there. So both Liverpool fullbacks, Trent and Robertson, underperforming last season based on what the underlying stats were saying they should have had. So I think having a look at both of these guys going into the new season, assuming Klopp can get that defence sorted, and let's face it, got Virgil coming back, you've signed Konate, we've got Alisson, who we hope is not, from a Liverpool perspective, going to be injured in the first game of the season. If all of those really unlucky things cannot happen, please, fingers crossed, at the beginning of this season, I'd expect the Liverpool defence to be much, much better. The clean sheets will come, I believe, with the signings that we're making. And then Robertson and Trent will come back to the fore, and they will be the force that they have been in previous seasons. The underlying stats suggest they should have done better last year. I think if Liverpool can stay a little bit more lucky with the defenders not getting injured and with Klopp sorting out that defence a little bit, I think they're both going to be on the radar pretty heavily. And I'll be going into this season absolutely with Trent Alexander-Arnold nailed on, absolutely with Salah nailed on, and I will be putting a lot of thought into putting Robertson in there as my third player. However, look out for some other value around the Liverpool assets. Jota at 7.5 looks really, really good as well. I'd expect him to get even more game time this season, particularly at the beginning of the season, with Roberto Firmino going long into the Copa America. I'd expect Jota to probably get some minutes in his absence there at the beginning of the season. Klopp has already said that actually the players that have gone long in these international tournaments will be given the time to rest and recuperate at the beginning of the season. So if you want to go for Jota early doors and take advantage of those first six, I'm not going to put you off. But the two that I will absolutely have are Salah and Trent. Guys, get in the comments below. Let me know, what have I missed from a Liverpool perspective? Liverpool fans, what do you think Konate is going to be like? Do you think he's going to make the difference at the back there for Liverpool? What about Virgil coming back at 6.5 in FPL? Should we be having a look at him? And where else in the midfield? Which midfielders in that midfield engine room? Have I missed any guys? Should we be looking elsewhere other than Trent and Salah and Robbo and Jota, or are they the main four? Get in the comments below. Hit subscribe if you're new to the FPL family. Leave us a like before you go, and I'll see you on the next video. Cheers, guys.